So today we have with us Andrew Ng. He's a junior in economics at Princeton and a partner at the Dorm Room Fund, which is a student-run venture capital firm backed by First Round Capital. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
We'd just like to start with some background. So where are you from and what are you up to right now?
I'm originally from Marlborough, New Jersey, which is about 40 minutes east from Princeton. And right now I'm going through the normal struggle of classes in the fall semester, enjoying myself, I guess. And other than that, I think things have been pretty good. So nothing special as of late.
So what are you passionate about? Like what gets you out of
Sure.
bed in the morning?
The areas that I'm most interested in are definitely in the world of startups, especially that of technology startups. So specifically within that industry, I'm really interested in education technology, especially how we can improve the education system in and out of schools. So companies like Khan Academy really fascinate me, and any other companies that are trying to tackle the personalized education problem, the adaptive learning problem. All these areas I find very interesting. I guess aside from education, you can think about it horizontally. I'm really interested in artificial intelligence and machine learning. So I'm also studying a bit of computer science here at Princeton aside from economics. And I also spent 2 years away from school starting and working on an education technology company.
So let's start with how you became passionate about these things in the first place.
It's probably started when I was very young, actually probably around freshman year of high school. I was a big chess player when I was younger. My dad taught me when I was 6 years old, and that was the one thing I kind of got pretty good at, and it was I guess my calling card when I started applying to colleges and stuff. That was much later. So in high school, I had played chess for a while up to that point, and I was fortunate enough to start a chess club at a local elementary school. It's about a 5-minute walk from my high school. And there, after every Friday, throughout all of high school, all 4 years, I went and I taught about 70 kids between first grade and 5th grade. And that was my first real experience working with kids and teaching them. And I kind of fell in love. I don't know what it was about working with kids, but I just got me really excited, and I like teaching and helping people. So I guess I identified a few issues with education at that time, and I guess that kind of carried over until when I started my company later on. When I left school, I think 6 years later, so my sophomore year of college. So to dive a bit deeper into what my experience was like working at a chess club teaching kids, I would typically go up there with a demo board, one of those big chess boards hanging on hanging down, right? And I would go ahead and make the moves and talk to these kids for maybe 20 or 30 minutes, and I'd be okay, so now that we've learned all this, let's go put it in action, let's practice. And I found that it was pretty difficult for them. They would all have different problems that they'd run into, and I would go and talk to them afterwards and what didn't you understand? And all of them would kind of have different sorts of problems. It's kind of like education in general, right? When you have a teacher in terms of a classroom teaching something, obviously the kids are going to be on different levels, and if they are on similar levels, they'll probably have different problems that they're dealing with. So I was okay, that's probably the problem. Let me try a different approach to my teaching style. So I guess a few weeks into my freshman year, I started working in small groups. I would take a group of 5 kids around a chessboard, and I'd be okay, so let's make this an interactive learning experience. I'll make some moves. If you have any questions, interrupt me, and we can solve that right here. And I found that small groups are great. I would be able to teach them way more effectively than I would in the demo board, because I can kind of address their problems one by one. And the issue there was kind of by the third small group, my hour was up, and I was oh shoot, I didn't get to teach the other 60 students that I wanted to teach. So that was a bit problematic as well. So that was the first encounter, I guess, with the education system. So you can kind of generalize this to 2 main issues that I kind of identified within, I guess, chess education, but education as a whole: that of personalization and that of scalability. So how can you effectively deliver a good education to a wide variety of students, right? And I didn't know at the time, but Khan Academy ultimately is a really great example of a company that's trying to solve this, as well as a company like Newton, which is trying to solve the whole adaptive learning. How can we deliver a unique curriculum to every single student based on their strengths and weaknesses? Can we just have them take diagnostic tests, multiple choice tests, and then kind of deliver them videos and exercises in a manner that's most effective for them, for that student in particular. So after I experienced that, I really couldn't really do anything about it at the time. But once I got to college, I had worked with on a few projects with some of my friends at that point. We started a company called Academy, which was specifically designed to address this problem of personalized education, specifically to chess, because it's like a very quantifiable area. You can use a lot of like computers to help you along the way, and that ended up being my main focus for 2 years. And although it didn't end up working out, I'm not still working there full time. We ended up building a product that's been used by like over 1 million people from like every country in the world. So that was really encouraging, and I definitely want to go back into the realm of education technology in the future.
So tell me about your thought process when you were considering taking time off, because it's definitely not a conventional thing to do.
Sure.
And there's a lot of risk.
Yeah.
So what pushed you to do that?
At the time, there were 3 of us. So to backtrack a bit, there's 3 of us that worked on the product from like June 2013 to August 2013, and there are 2 of my friends from high school, but not within my high school. I went to a science and engineering high school called High Technology High School. It's in Lincroft, New Jersey, and these 2 of my friends, High Tech High, yeah. And these 2 of my friends are actually both from the town of Princeton. Really coincidental. One went to Lawrenceville, and the other one went to Princeton High School. And we had met like junior year of high school because one of them was like very entrepreneurial. He like started like a bunch of stuff, created like a really great network of like developers, designers, business people here in the town of Princeton. And I just was introduced to him through a mutual friend, but we had worked on a few things up to that point. So he actually approached me with this idea of Chess Academy. I had experienced these problems with education, but he specifically had the need of like, oh, I'm trying to learn chess, but it's hard. Please help me. So that's why we built the product together to kind of address that need, right? But so I'm getting to the December, January part when I ended up taking time off. So we worked on it from June to August 2013, launched the product, and it was like really well received by the general, like we launched on like Hacker News and like Reddit, and we were trending on Twitter for a bit. We got like a lot of great feedback, and that was awesome. Unfortunately, 2 of us, we were sophomores in college, so we had to go back to school, and one of us was a senior in high school, so he obviously, had to go back to school. And we didn't really do anything for the next like few months leading to like December, January. A few things happened in that time. One, we were getting like a lot of really great organic growth. People were still blowing up my inbox saying, oh, like, I want to see this feature, I want to see this feature. So I was like, okay, that's nice, but sorry, I don't have time to help you out. And the other thing was I went on Silicon Valley Tiger Trek. It's a program organized here at Princeton that sends like 30 or I forget it's 20 or 30 or so students out to Silicon Valley, and we meet a bunch of really awesome individuals. Incidentally, Sal Khan was one of those people from Khan Academy. And we met just a bunch of venture capitalists, people in the startup world, and I came back, and I was actually a ORFE major, or Operations Research and Financial Engineering major, and after that trip, I switched to computer science. And then fast forward to like December, January, we implemented like SEO, which is like search engine optimization on our site, which made us like better cataloged in Google, and we started getting like a lot more traffic than we did before. And then my co-founder, who was a sophomore in college, decided, like, both of us kind of mutually decided, hey, like, this is a unique opportunity. We didn't think it was that risky because we always had the option of going back to school, and we thought that it was like a time-sensitive decision. I would say, like, this opportunity probably won't come by like in the future, like ever, maybe a few times more, but probably not in the near future. So you're like, we can still get a lot out of this. We can get a great learning opportunity. We can work on something that we ourselves started and have like a lot of ownership over and are like really passionate about. So he dropped out of school in January, and I did as well. And our third co-founder unfortunately could not drop out of school because he had to finish his high school year and get his like diploma, right? So he didn't join us until later, but we ended up just dropping out with like no real plan of like, we had no office plan, we didn't know where we were going to be. It was just kind of like, let's just see what happens and try to make the most out of it. And we ended up being very fortunate. We got introduced to some really great people. We spent half a year in New York as part of a program called a TechStars affiliate program. We were just working out of a startup accelerator's office. And then we eventually built up the product where we applied to an accelerator called Imagine K-12, which ultimately became the education technology branch of an accelerator called Y Combinator, which is more well known, I guess, in the area, in the Bay Area. So our third co-founder joined us, and then after that we spent like the next like 2 years working on it. And I would say like it was a really great experience, and I don't regret it at all. And I think that the fact that I ended up coming back to Princeton, even though the company ended up failing, I don't regret it because I still kind of got everything I wanted to get out of that experience. And I also learned not only like the importance of how to effectively manage a team, like how to do, well, how not to do a lot of things. It's a great, both an inefficient and an efficient learning experience, like starting a company, because you learn a lot of what not to do instead of like what to do, which is pretty inefficient, right? But the fact that you're the one doing it makes it efficient because you're not like reading a book and saying, oh, like I understand. You're like messing up and saying, oh crap, that was bad. So like that in that way it becomes like a much, like it's beaten to your head. It's very efficient in that way. But like I understand that I probably could have learned a different, like I could have learned possibly more like joining a startup that was kind of already kind of successful and growing, and learning from people who know how to do it right, as opposed to like starting from scratch and doing a lot of things wrong. But I still think that having that experience was very valuable. So I think that my co-founders also agree, and like all of us realized the importance of education, and eventually all of us did end up going back to school. One of us, the senior in high school, ended up matriculating to Stanford, and the other one ended up going to transferring to Columbia. So all of us after that I think all of us kind of realized that we still had a lot left to learn, and we wanted to kind of make the most of our education. And I also really wanted to come back to Princeton to try to get the most out of it as well.
Tell me about some of your biggest failures and setbacks, what you learned and how you got out of them.
I would say the biggest failure that I had was coming up with a revenue stream for Chess Academy. We started Chess Academy kind of from like our own pain point, which is I think a good reason for starting a business, but I don't think that we had a great understanding of the market when we were going into it. I would define what we did as very much as like a passion project, something that when you solve something that you guys are really familiar with, that you have great domain expertise in, but you might not necessarily understand the possibilities of like becoming like $1 billion company, right? Because so when we started Chess Academy, our plan was, oh, this can be huge. There are like a lot of there are many casual like chess players in the world that could definitely benefit from this product. But I guess we were a bit blinded by like our vision versus like I guess the perspective of the people that are within our market. We kind of bet on the fact that people were willing to learn chess and be willing to pay for it. Whereas like we kind of drew from like, oh, like Code Academy is a great example. People are willing to pay to learn how to code. But there is like a means to an end for this. Like people do that to get jobs, but we never really realized that people just play chess to have fun. And I think that speaks to like a bigger picture understanding of startups and technology, that one of the most important things is having a great market understanding and like talking to your users. So we talked to a lot of our users, but we kind of told ourselves what we wanted to hear in a way, and we didn't really accept the realities of, oh, it's going to be really hard making money in this business until much later. So I think that for anyone who's interested in going to the world of startups, that really understanding your user base to the point where you know where the money is coming from is probably the most important thing, because it's easy to get blinded by like, oh, we have like great user growth, we have like a bunch of people using our site for long periods of time and sending us feedback. Usually that is a really great sign, but if you haven't thought about it like to the end of, oh, how am I actually going to make money on this, it can probably be pretty difficult for you to raise funding in the future and eventually grow your business to become a successful one.
So tell me about your college applications process.
Sure.
What was that like for you, and what do you wish you had known when you first started?
The high school I went to was a pretty competitive one. There's about like 70 kids per grade, and everyone kind of like applied to like all the colleges. I remember that I applied to like 13, and that was when after talking to people like from other schools, that was a lot. But I had friends that applied to like 20 plus colleges, and it was like crazy. It was a kind of a spray and like pray and like hopefully one of these will fall.
Spray and pray.
It only takes one, right? Yeah. Like,
yeah, that's true.
But things that I recall very strongly from my application process, I would say that one thing is trying to one of the tricks that I taught myself is like, if I was like a college reader and I was like reading my application, what would I think? And it speaks to the topic of like differentiation, which I think like most people applying to college know about this, but they may not have like worked it out to its entirety. And I was like, if I'm looking at a bunch of students who, sure, like academically qualified, sure, like have some extracurriculars, how is this person like different from the whole bunch of other people applying? And it also becomes more difficult because a lot of people applying to these schools like as an Asian male, and the fact that like I think 60 or 70% of my school was Asian, it becomes like even more difficult in some ways because on paper it's really easy to look the same. So from the get go, I was like, okay, how can I be different? How can I like show it to them that I'm like something like special that they haven't seen before, which they probably have seen before, but at the very least they've seen very few of me before, right? So I was fortunate enough to have played a lot of chess when I was younger. So I would say that my college application really was built around that image that I wanted to portray. Like, oh, this person isn't just, oh, I wasn't very good at school. So I can't say just good at school because I wasn't that great. But also has spent a lot of their time with a passion that they've poured like over 15, 20,000 hours of their life into and has something to show for it. And I guess it was from that point that the most important lesson I learned from that entire process is that of telling a story. And I think that that's something that there's not as much emphasis on like storytelling and communication as I would like, because you're basically selling yourself, you're pitching yourself. And that came up so many times when I was like working at Chess Academy. When you're raising money, what are you doing? You're selling yourself. When you're pitching your company to like a bunch of people, you're selling yourself. You're like telling them, oh, I'm like capable, I can do this, right? And it's no different when you're like applying to colleges. You're telling them, oh, you want me, like I'm special, and these are the reasons why you should take me. And I think telling a story kind of is the key theme here, because if you can, like around your Common App essay, for example, mine was about seeing the world differently because I had such a unique experience of traveling around like the world, playing chess, meeting a bunch of like random people from different cultures, and having that kind of like those kinds of like wide variety of experience, like, and then like that within me, that I try to like convey that. And everything else, like my resume and like supplemental essays, just touched on that core idea of like seeing things in a different lens. Some of it may draw from chess, but some of it may draw from like other things, like things I like to read or write or any of those other topics. So yeah, to break it down, really just finding a way to cohesively tell a story and tie everything into some sort of into some sort of story that shows that you're really different from everyone else.
And what's your long-term plan now that you're a year away from graduation?
Sure.
And how do you want to get there?
If you want to fast forward to backtrack to my freshman year, it's very different at that time. I was like, wasn't sure if I should go into technology, if I should go into finance, like, especially at a place here like Princeton, there is quite a bit of social pressure to kind of pursue certain paths. And I certainly was within that frame of that mindset, at least, of what I wanted to do. But it became far clearer after I worked in Chess Academy that my plan was certainly within the tech world, but there's a few different like steps along the way. So the first step was to understand the venture capital industry, so the business of like raising money from like investors from the other side. So I probably pitched over I pitched many people when I was raising money, and I got rejected from like pretty much all of them. But through the process of rejection, I kind of learned like, hey, this is pretty interesting. Like I'm teaching all these people so much about the industry that I'm in, like education technology in the realm of chess. How many people are you going to meet that are focused in that area, right? So if I was in their shoes, I would meet dozens of founders within the week. I would learn so much from them. And I was like, you know what? If I want to start a company again in the future, I need to see the world from their perspective. Like the technology industry from a macro lens. Like, what are the industry trends? Like, what are people up to? Like, what are the hot companies that I should be looking at? All of these things. So I was like, okay. After I came back, and I came back to school my second semester sophomore year, I was like, you know what? This summer I'm going to try to learn more about venture capital. Sure, I had a great experience. I had a bunch of experiences as a founder, but I need to see things on like the higher level. And more than that, I was interested in like a quantitative approaches to venture capital as well, because a lot of my coursework here is in computer science. I was like, I think that it would be a good blend to have develop both my quantitative and qualitative skills within this realm. So I spent the summer at a company called 2 Sigma Ventures, which is the venture arm of 2 Sigma Investments, which is a better known like hedge fund in New York. And I learned a lot about the technology industry, specifically within the realm of machine learning and data science startups. And I had like a really great experience doing that. And moving forward, the plan is still to go back into the realm of startups, but there's still so much left to learn, right? Like, I kind of experienced what a 3-person startup looks like, myself and my 2 co-founders. What does a growing startup look like? What does like a successful startup look like? I really want to put myself through a bunch of these experiences so that down the road when I start something again in the future, hopefully in the realm of education, I would have all these experiences to draw from. Like, I know what I did wrong and the two things I did right. I could learn from all these people that are in the 50, 100, 150, like 200 people startups. Like all these experiences kind of combine to and contribute to what I want to ultimately do in the future, which is start my own and hopefully take it through all these stages that I will have experienced in like a prior job. So yeah, that's my long-term goal.
Very cool. Last question for you today. What are some values or principles that you live by?
I always have closely identified with the idea of utilitarianism. The idea that you should kind of have, I guess to put it very simply, you want to increase the overall amount of happiness in the world. But to me, it's a bit different. Like, I want to be able to contribute, I want to be able to benefit the lives of others in kind of expanding rings around myself. So like, my family is very important, obviously my friends, my community, and ultimately the world, right? So I kind of use that lens to justify a lot of the actions that I take, and it does contribute to why I think startups are important to me. Not because like the tech industry is very interesting. I think that you're contributing to overall human knowledge, which I think is great. You're building. I'm interested in consumer facing products, so yeah, you're improving the lives of people there. But I think that the highest leverage activity I can take is within a field that I feel like I have experience in, and I think has the maximum impact towards others. So that's kind of how I focused on education, because I kind of view that area as, if you can fix this, everything else kind of follows, right? Like, if you can improve the overall education levels of whatever country you choose, like a lot of other stuff will get figured out like along the way. And I will say that another principle, which is less glamorous than what I just said, is it's a bit selfish. I would like to be like remembered. It's a bit like I would like to like leave a legacy, and it just so happens that I guess being in startups and making a big name out of myself, or being able to contribute a lot to society, would give me that honor of being able to be remembered. So I think that those two things, utilitarianism and like wanting to leave a legacy, are like the two things that really drive my decisions.
Very cool. Thank you so much for being with us,
Yes,
Andrew.
thank you.